Welcome to Brea Talks, an insider's look into topics that affect your experiences in the city of Brea. Whether you live, work, or play here, we are bringing you the information you need to better understand your city. So now we invite you to listen in as Brea Talks.
Hello, and thank you for joining us. I'm Dan Fenstermaker, Media Services Specialist for the City of Brea. Today at Brea Talks Communications and Marketing. With me are Liz Ferris, Public Information Officer for the City of Brea, and Ruben Segura and Amy Matsumoto, Media Services Specialists, each for the City of Brea. Guys, thanks for joining me as I join you as well, I suppose.
Thanks for having us, Dan.
Yes, thank you.
Love being here.
Yeah, so Liz, let's start with you. You started with the City of Brea when?
I started as an intern in June of 1999.
Wow.
So a really long time ago.
So you enjoy working for the City of Brea.
Yes, I do.
And you're the public information officer. So what are some of the day-to-day duties that a public information officer does?
Okay, well, one of the things that kept me here so long is that there's no normal day-to-day, right? That each day is different from the next, and you never quite know what you're walking into. But in general, right, as the PIO, it is my responsibility to inform and communicate with the community, right? We have, as we'll dive into this podcast, we have many ways to do that, right? But in a nutshell, that's, I see that as that's the overarching theme.
Sure.
Another part of my, I feel like I tend to wear a lot of hats, right? That PIO is one of them. The other one, as communications and marketing manager, I promote the great city of Brea, right? We want, our regional partners, the world, right, to know how great Brea is. Its services, its cities, come here. We have great places to shop and dine and have fun. So that's a little bit of that. And then kind of like a one-off, it somewhat relates, but kind of handling legislative affairs, working with, our politicians, both on the federal and state level. I think that all kind of ties in when it comes to informing and attracting people to Brea. So yeah, it's fun, right? I work with city council, city managers, department directors, our community partners. But the best part is working with you all, my great team that I'm so proud to have and just thrive off your talent and innovation.
Oh, thank you for that, Liz. Let's really quick touch on that legislative part of it. So a little bit more into that. So legislation coming down the pike in terms of changes that affect us at the local level. You kind of facilitate kind of getting the word about.
That's right. So definitely don't do it on my own. The city has a legislative advocacy partnership that we actually, the word is slipping my mind. We have a service agreement. Right? Okay. They're called Townsend Public Affairs. We work with them. They're the experts, right? They know the ins and outs. They know Brea as a city. What legislation pertains to us? Is it housing related? Homelessness, traffic, and they monitor stuff that's happening in the legislative, both in state and federal. They see what bills are coming up. So here on our part, we form with council what are the top priorities, what are the things that are important to us, and they keep that list. They monitor what's happening. And then we kind of mesh the two together. When something comes up, when there's a bill that's looking like it might get passed, whether it's a good thing or maybe something that might hinder us, they let us know. And then that's where I work to try to get, some letters of either opposition or support to try to, they help us lobby in essence to make sure ultimately that we're doing the best for our community and the things that get passed.
Excellent. Ruben. My man.
How's it going, Dan?
Good. Thanks for being here, pal. You came on board the Brea Communications and Marketing team in the middle of the pandemic. And then you right away got to work on refreshing the city's branding and look.
Yeah, so having a consistent brand standard is something that really helps build just a sense of continuity and trust internally amongst ourselves and also externally with the residents and the patrons of the city. As we all know, we're public servants, and being able to better streamline our communication with our residents and patrons is truly the reason why this team exists.
Talk to me about the process when it comes to branding. I mean, how much input are you pulling in terms of obviously you have guidelines you have to stay within, but is it really just a free for all? You just start throwing stuff together, or do you pull inspiration from places? What do you have a history of in the both public and private sector? Mm-hmm. So talk to me a little bit about that process.
Yeah, I mean, ultimately it starts off pretty broad. It starts off exploring. I like to look for inspiration in other agencies, not just locally, but also at a global level. It's also good to see what other brands are doing outside of the scope of government. What works for a private sector brand in communication also works quite well at the government level. So for us as a city, the goal is figuring out how can we unify that brand without necessarily throwing out what's been working. We try to find the elements that exist. Sure. So, for example, the Hills logo got a bit of a refresh side by side from the old one. It's very clear that this is an update from an existing piece. But by updating it a little bit and bringing in some more modern touches in terms of typography, the font choices and color selections, just really helps bring an slightly older brand to a modern level without, a complete update.
Yeah, more of a refresh than
Correct.
than a complete change.
Mm-hmm.
Very cool. And our newest member of the communications marketing team, who's actually joining us remotely today, she just welcomed a new member of her team at home, Amy Matsumoto. Hi, Amy. Thanks for joining us.
Hi, everybody. Thanks for having me via Zoom.
Amy, you started here in Brea a little over a year ago and hit the ground running, bringing our social media engagement, kind of adding to that and really running point on it. And I will say that we've had a noticeable increase in our community engagement through social media since you've kind of started taking the lead on that. How much do you feel like people are really interested in and want to engage with their local governments on social media?
Believe it or not, a lot of residents like to be engaged and involved with the city of Brea, with their community through social media. I think social media is a great tool for residents to figure out what's going on locally, globally. It's in the palm of their hand. So if we can provide some interaction for them and create some great content and provide information, then I think we're doing our job.
Yeah, it's awesome. It's really cool to see. I was talking to Liz about this yesterday. The idea that you don't know how much kind of the community hungers for engagement on social media until you start creating it, and the more you create, it seems like the more they want. You leave them wanting more,
Exactly.
And so it kind of like sort of snowballs into this like fun and exciting, how big can we go sort of thing. Also within the boundaries of not too much, right? You're not trying to flood and spam people all the time in their feeds with stuff. You've got to be kind of do it with a purpose and target. And we'll talk a little bit about that here in a bit. But I want to introduce myself as well. Again, I'm Dan Fenstermaker, and I've been here for about 8.5 years. And where Ruben handles most of the graphic design and Amy runs social media, I typically oversee the audiovisual multimedia outlets for the city of Brea, such as the PEG channel, Spectrum Channel 3, and AT&T Uverse Channel 99. We also stream on our website, cityofbrea.net/BreaTV. And I run the city council meetings. Obviously, with this team here, I technically direct those. Ruben handles the camera work. Sometimes Amy steps in and handles the cameras. Liz runs the floor management. She's in the room, kind of my eyes and ears down there. And yeah, I love this team. I love being a part of it. Together we put together PSAs, and also this podcast you're listening to now is a big part, obviously, of what we all do and what I'm very proud of bringing back. So enough from me. You'll have plenty of opportunity to listen to me and the rest of us, as we're actually going to be moving forward with this podcast and rotating duties as far as hosting goes. You'll hear from each of us as different topics come across this pod. But we actually have a fifth member, and I do want to mention her. Yedika Ambries is our division's management analyst, and she couldn't be here today for this recording because she's actually working on another informational city program, Engage Brea, which is sort of a weekly course, if you will, for residents that are interested in how the city operates and can get a chance to listen to department directors and department staff, and just kind of a little more in-person inside look on what we do here in the city of Brea. So we look to hear from her in later episodes down the road. Let's go to Liz with this next topic, specifically about this podcast for a second. Liz, you and I been around, you much longer than me, but we were kind of the elder statesmen, if you will, of this team. Yeah, the veterans. There you go. This podcast isn't brand new.
That's right.
But it has been a minute.
It has. So yeah, I mean, I would say podcasts are kind of the like social media, kind of a newer way to communicate. But yeah, I think it was fall of 2019, and it was, you and I, Dan, and at the time, the city planner, just had a good team of like, oh, what do we do next? What's the next way to communicate? And we thought, hey, we have all the equipment, all the things necessary to do a podcast. Why don't we try it? Coupled that with, there was foresight to some development coming, and it was like, why don't we use this opportunity to educate our residents, right? We've done it all the other ways. Let's try this new way to just give people a different insight as to why as a city certain things are done and how things work and so forth. And that's where we came up with the podcast. I think we had 5 or 6 episodes.
Yeah, I believe 5 episodes.
And they're up, right? They're
still
archived
up
on this channel. Both
season 1.
Yes, there you go. Season 1. And they were great. We had outside guests that would come, subject matter experts, and speak about different topics. But then, COVID shortly came, and kind of the ideas, it kind of just, like everything else, right? Everything kind of just stopped. There was a pause, right? Mm-hmm. There were other things that were pressing, and this got pushed aside. And yeah, I think as we've always known, we wanted to bring it back, right? And as we've come out of COVID and are now, being able to look toward the future and make plans, I think it's a great opportunity to bring it back. And I think, we still are this is still to give, the community an inside look at how government works. But I think we plan to use more of city staff than outside experts, right?
Yes.
And maybe a blend. But
yes.
But it'd be great for the community to get to know who are the people that are working for them, providing their services. Why do we do things? And how do you put Brea Fest together, right? I think and topics like that. So I'm super excited to be able to bring back Brea Talks and see what other great ideas we come up with.
Absolutely. And I think this is a good opportunity maybe just to let people know that over the course of the first several episodes, we're going to be asking for topics from the community that they might be interested in. I mean, we can say all day what we think you might be interested in as listeners, but really nobody knows better than you what you're interested in hearing about with regards to how the city functions, the the a little bit of insider's knowledge on things like Liz said, on how special events collaborate with other departments and what goes into something like Brea Fest, or how does the budget get put together, or what are
Why do I need to get a permit
Yeah.
when I'm doing work at home?
Right, exactly. So all good
things like that.
things, and we're definitely looking forward. I'm very excited about this podcast, and yeah, moving forward should be a lot of fun. Let's talk a little bit about social media again, Amy. I touched on it briefly that it's a little more. It's done with a little more purpose than just posting at will. What are the keys to successful social engagement from the community, you think?
The keys to successful engagement in the community is to have fun through social media, and to gain trust through social media. But ultimately, it's that engagement. So what that looks like is creating fun polls like, what's your favorite pancake? Or do you celebrate Donut Day like we do, because we enjoy donuts in the office? And it gets people to like our content, to interact, to give their point of view of, I don't want to say nonsense stuff, but silly stuff, day-to-day stuff that doesn't relate to the city per se. But with that engagement, our content seems to come to the top of their feed. And that's what ultimately we want, is that is we want our city,
What does he think?
or our residents
Let's have him
to he has an opinion.
He agrees.
Yeah, he agrees. But what we want is our city residents to have the City of Brea content on the top of their social media feed. So in case of an emergency, they can see it right away, as opposed to scrolling through their feed. The more interaction that they are involved with in our content, the more content they see of ours that we post, whether it's funny or just informative. And there's also strategy of like when to post, what days to post, and what type of post, like a reel or a picture, a story, or a survey. It all comes down to analytics and what people like the most. And you'd be surprised on the numbers of, how much an informative post is shared with the community, as opposed to like a fun, silly one.
And I think it goes to show it's methodical, it's strategic, right? I mean, we all have our personal social media, and it's, on the moment I'm doing something fun. But in this one, we really,
Sure.
want to make sure it's effective and
Absolutely.
being used correctly, because our ultimate goal is to engage and inform, and that's how it's viewed.
Definitely. And those were just examples. Obviously, the answer is buttermilk pancakes.
Right.
Just an example. I appreciate
Chocolate
that.
chip.
Amy touched a little bit about analytics, and that's a great segue into our next topic. Ruben, a measuring tool that we use to measure our effectiveness with regards to communicating to the public is analytics. And one of the first things, when I mean first, you were probably here 2 days, and you came over to my desk and you're like, what do we do with regards to analytics? I gotta know. Do we do anything? Because I want to do stuff with analytics. I've got all these things I want to do with analytics. And I couldn't believe it. I was like, dude, I don't know if that's like 3 years away. And Ruben's like, no, it's 3 days away. And you took off with analytics. Talk to us about that.
Yeah, being able to look at the analytics of the various campaigns that you're launching, it's one thing to communicate in general to our community. It's another to communicate effectively and ultimately learn based off of the responses that we have from the community. So if we have a campaign that launches a full plethora of avenues, whether it's social media, we have email marketing, we have direct mail marketing, we have different campaigns that we run, we have videos. If we're not actively responding to how those tools or methods are being received, then ultimately we're not really learning to better serve our community. If we realize that our community responds best through video-based social media reels or through direct mail pieces, then it's in our best interest to communicate to our community effectively to increase that frequency. And we're a small but mighty team. We do a lot of things. We wear a lot of hats, and ultimately, to use our time effectively, we need to focus on the things that work, and not just the things that work, but the things that the community wants. Like the podcast is something new that we're bringing to the table. We're bringing back to the table, and ultimately, this is a tool that we're trying out and seeing how it works. If this becomes a hot topic, or if this becomes a very pivotal tool in our arsenal, then we're just going to continue to go at it hard and heavy. And it's fun to be able to see how your campaigns are performing to better adjust your strategy for the future.
Definitely. In fact, the hosting site that we use for this pod actually has analytics that tracks number of downloads.
Yeah.
And do we dare announce whatever the number for this particular episode is on the next pod? Do we let people know? I guess you have to tune in next time to find out what kind of traction this particular episode got. I want to talk one last thing, Ruben. I want to talk about Brea Line and as it relates to analytics and the idea that Brea Line is there was an initiative or an effort several years back called Engage Brea. Brea Envisions. Excuse me. Brea Envisions. And it was Liz, you can talk just a little briefly about.
Right. So two things. It's really, and of course, dating myself, but I already said, right? June 1999. There weren't many options then if I think about it, of how people got their information, right? And how we put information out. Fast forward to today, there's so many opportunities. People get their information in many different ways. So I think, it's important to choose them strategically, right? It's impossible, we could do them all the time, but, I prefer to pick the ones that make sense and give it our all, right? To put that way. But yes, to go back to Brea Envisions, right? It was an effort where the community was surveyed on various topics. We chose at that time, of course, we want to know, how do people want to receive their communication? I want to say it was, what year was it? 2018?
It might have been before the Centennial.
Before Centennial, so maybe it was 2016. So, even then, time to do another one, right? Yeah. But even then, if you think about social media, it was still kind of on the uptick. There was an Instagram. I think it was Twitter and Facebook were kind of the top two. But yeah, we did ask residents, how do you prefer to get your information? And I was pleasantly surprised to find out that the Brea Line newsletter came up on top. That
Number
people
one,
really enjoyed that piece. And of course, that's been in production way before my time, right? It's gone through various iterations. But yeah, back then, that's what people said. I like my Brea Line newsletter. So that gave us an information to know, okay, it's a piece we definitely need to keep producing, because that's how people look for their news.
Right. And as you mentioned, the Brea Envisions effort was I guess the first attempt in if we want to call analog analytics, in terms of gathering as much information as possible, but not necessarily in the digital in the digital realm that Ruben's working in now with analytics. So coupling that information about Brea Line, they get sent out to every Brea resident.
And business. I believe it's every Brea address.
Correct. Okay, every address in Brea
address.
gets one. A hard copy, but then Ruben kind of took it next level and created. It's always been digital in terms of it's always been available online. But Ruben, talk a little bit about just the way we track it and how quickly we saw kind of the trend of opening it online.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so when Brea Line took a bit of a hiatus around COVID, after it came back, it launched its first issue in a strictly digital platform before returning back to print delivery. So now we're doing print delivery, and we have the digital platform. The digital platform that we have, which we have just launched our 6th issue. what it allows us to see is it allows us to see how frequently residents or patrons are seeing it, what pages, what they're viewing mostly, what how much time is spent in the document in total, what links they're clicking on the most. And just going back to the previous statement about the analytics is being able to see that just really helps us understand where our residents' attention is, what they're looking for. You know, we see what programs are being clicked on more. Of course, we have the signups for programs, but you know, quite a few of the programs, they cap out, they sell out. So if we only have 24 seats in a particular program and those 24 fill up, all we know is it got filled. But if we're seeing clicks in the hundreds through the Brea line document that we have, it allows us to have that understanding that this isn't just an in demand because it's going to sell out. It's like there's a demand for this to grow exponentially. There's a demand for a particular summer program or a concert or other event that we might put on. There's room for it to grow. Or when it comes to the first half of the Brea line document is city news. Everything from council recaps to development updates to things that are affecting our day-to-day lives as residents and patrons of the city. And if people are spending an absorbent amount of time diving into a particular page, then we know this is a topic that people want more of, in which case we get to focus our communication content to fulfill that need.
That's awesome. And you can get really granular in terms of finding out exactly what the residents are, what's on their mind. Like you mentioned, development updates. City of Brea is known for its development, and so it's good to see that it's this time spent on the Brea line isn't necessarily we know it's not wasted because we have the proof.
Right.
That people want more information, and then like you said, we can, we double a page worth of information. Make it a 2-page spread on something if we see that there's clearly a demand for it.
Yeah, it also allows us to double down in other areas. So if we're limited in space, then we know maybe we launch a social campaign. Perhaps there's a podcast episode about it.
Yeah.
That it really allows us to learn
generally,
and it impacts our campaigns holistically.
Right. That's great. That's awesome.
And I think like the overarching theme between social, Brea line, our communication is very intentional, right?
Yes.
We have a plan, we track it, we know what we're doing, and that's how we pick the way we do it.
No, absolutely. Great stuff, everyone. I think that does it. Is there anything I missed? Anything anybody feels like they want to add? This was a good first run back, we'll say.
Yes.
First run back, season 2. Season 2, episode 1 in the can.
Right.
Awesome. All right. Well, thank you for listening. That's it for Brea Talks. This episode and all the episodes of Brea Talks are available wherever you get your podcasts, as well as on Brea TV and our YouTube channel, youtube.com/City of Brea. And where this particular episode was strictly audio, we are planning on frequently filming them. So you can look for, like I said, look for them wherever you get your podcasts and on those other outlets. Don't forget to, I got to get this right here. Don't forget to like, subscribe, rate, review, but most importantly, don't forget to join us next time. That was a lot. Don't forget to do all the things.
That was awesome.
Do them all.
Do all the things. For the entire City of Brea Communications and Marketing Division team, I'm Dan Fenstermaker, and thanks for listening in as Brea Talks.